Alright, so for today's project, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little more modern take on a picnic table. I found these designs on Pinterest. So I'm going to use that as a platform and kind of adapt it to my own thing. Pretty basic design, but it's still a little more modern and elegant, a little more sleek design than your traditional picnic table. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and choose my boards. I do have a stockpile of 1x6 lumber. Typically we would build this out of 2x lumber, but I'm going to use what I have on hand, and then we're going to go back and seal it with a water seal stain. A lot of times people would want to build this out of pressure treated lumber. That's fine. It's a little more costly, but like I said, I'm going to use the product that I have here that is available and I already have paid for. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. Build this picnic table. What? Alright, so because I'm a very visual person, I like to go ahead and lay out what I'm looking at. To try to determine what a good width for this table is going to be, and see exactly how many boards I want to put in the middle. I want everything to be laid out symmetrical. So I don't work off a SketchUp, so all I do is just jot my measurements down on here. Later, if I want to replicate this, I can either work off my hand drawings or I can go into SketchUp and actually design one and have the dimensions I can plug in to that program to spit out a cut list. I believe this is a good ratio, and when I looked it up, it said that the traditional American picnic table is 29 inches wide, and oddly enough, this fell at exactly 29 inches wide. Okay, so I've laid the lines out on all the pieces to where those miters will be cut, and I want to get this piece done first because this will determine the increments and the measurements of nearly every other piece cut after it. So we've got them all laid out to where we'll have nice mitered corners, and it'll be essentially a big picture frame kind of. And then inside of that, we will lay our other supporting boards for the tabletop. Okay, so I've just done a dry fit to make sure everything's going to work out. Everything looks good, so now we're going to apply the glue. Since this is going to go outside, we're going to use a weatherproof glue. So we lay it all out, and this is what it'll look like. So these will be attached on the bottom side, and then the leg braces will rest in the middle of here, and from the other side we'll be able to have a place to screw down our slats that compose the middle of our tabletop. Okay, so now I've determined the angle at which I want the ends of the legs to sit, which is 35 degrees. And I found the center point and where it will make the legs stand at that angle, and struck lines across the legs to be able to cut out a half lap. So I want to half lap each board and give this joint a lot of strength because it's going to carry the weight of the bench. So now we have two very strong, very stable, good looking joints in the middle. So now, in order to check our work and to make sure that both the tabletop will sit flush and this leg assembly will sit flush to the ground, all I have to do is flip it upside down, and both of those guys sit flush directly on that surface. So no matter which side is which, they're both going to be level once positioned. So my tabletop will sit flat, and the picnic table itself will sit flat on the ground. Okay, so now I've tried to just roughly lay out what the orientation of the boards would be with equal spacing on each gap in between. So I think I've got it pretty good. So now at this point, what I want to do is transfer this center line where my screw line is going to be all the way across these center boards as well. in order to do that, I'll just pop a chalk line from one side to the other, and that gives me my straight line where my screws should go. So now I just went ahead and screwed all those water resistant screws. You want to make sure you're using what's rated for outdoor use so your screws don't rot away and rust up in a couple of years. So we pretty much have the look we're going for. It looks like it's framed in rather than solid pieces, which was really easy to pull off, but to me it makes for a more modern take on the picnic table. So now that we've gotten all that done, braces are on the bottom, and now the slats from the top of the table are secured to the braces that will hold our legs. Essentially the seats are the same thing on a smaller scale. So we want to go ahead and get started on those seats and start to build scaled down versions of this for either side for the seats to go on here. Now we've laid out the seats into the same position. I've taken the middle seat slats and just tacked them down. I've also marked where I want my screw lines to fall, so we'll drill and countersink those screws all the way around. Now I've inverted the tabletop. I've made sure the distance is equal on the leg braces from the edge of the table. So then we'll take our 3/8 inch bolts. The shear pressure on this bolt is 2,200 pounds, so that should be more than sufficient to hold our table together. And the great thing about this is with these bolts and the construction of this table, if you have to move it at some point, you can take it apart, take the legs, the bench apart, and disassemble the table to move it. So I want to find a good strong point where the X-brace and the braces supporting the tabletop intersect and try to grab as much of that as I can. Put my washer on. Drive it through. Washer on the back side. Attach the nuts. Now you could use carriage bolts for this process, but carriage bolts are a little more expensive. So I opted to just go ahead and use a hex head bolt. Same effect, just a little more economical for it. Okay, so we'll do that all the way around, and then I'll move on to supports for the benches off to the side of the table. Okay, so now what we want to do is add the supports for our seat assembly. I've found a comfortable distance from the ground, and also I've found a good distance from the edge of the seat assembly to the support. So I want them to all be symmetrical, but at the same time I want where these are going to be positioned to have enough bite of the bolt that will secure it to the bench. They're going to be 1.5 inches in, and I've used my combination square to set that measurement for a quicker seat. So I want to make sure these are nice and flush. And once they're in position, those look good. I can go ahead and pop a couple brad nails in there, and that'll secure them just enough for me to get in there and drill these holes out and run our bolts in this part of the assembly. Okay, so we have the leg assemblies in place and bolted in. So now we're going to decide how far away from the tabletop we want to position them, and then we'll put the bottom supports in that ties the whole thing together. Okay, so now it's really starting to take shape. We have our benches together and our picnic table top. So the next length of material we need to determine is the cross brace that's going to attach those supports for the seat to the ones for the table and really stabilize everything. I've laid it out for an increment that I think works, which is going to be 62 inches, and that is comfortable to allow you to get in and out of the table while also being close enough to the tabletop for children to eat. So now the only part we have left to finish the structure is to tie these pieces in, and that's going to stabilize the rest of the table. So we have 1 2x4 on either side of each leg brace. Everything is going to be just the same as running all the other bolts and the other support pieces there. So we'll go ahead and situate these. I'll clamp them into place and run a small screw in there just to keep everything stabilized, and then go ahead and get the paddle bit and drill our 3/8 inch hole for our 5-inch bolts. Okay, so all I did was the same method to find center on those to keep everything looking really symmetrical. Was grab my combination square, marked out the center vertically with where my bolts should line up, and then on these X braces I just kind of tried to guesstimate where the center point would be for those. I did line them up vertically so that it looks like all those bolts are in the same place in relation to each other. So now we just got to get her sanded down and we'll be ready to put a finish on this product. Okay, so now we got it built, but I still want to take it apart, sand it really well, and stain it. So I've marked bottom left, bottom right, corresponded the numbers to the braces that go across. So that way I'll know once this is disassembled exactly where each one of those boards goes. I thought about having to do it at the top and the bottom, but if I just leave the markings on the bottom, then I know that this is the bottom of this board. 1 2 3 4 5 6 and so on. So we'll take it apart, give it a good sanding, and then we'll be able to apply our water sealer finish. So here it is, it's all finished. We have the final coats of Thompson's water seal on it to protect it from the elements. I really enjoyed doing this build. It turned out really nicely. It's got a lot of similarities to the old picnic table design that most people are familiar with, but just enough differences to where it feels a little more modern and we're bringing it into the 21st century. I was surprised at how the bolts interact with the design to stabilize the entire build. Typically you would have to have at least a brace to brace out the tabletop to the X braces to keep it from racking, but there's no issue with that. Those bolts, when they tighten up, man, it locks it all together. So I hope this was helpful for one of you out there that's deciding to build a picnic table for your family gatherings for the summer and the rest of the spring. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and hit like and subscribe, and we'll have some more how-to videos coming soon. Thank you. Have a good day.